So let's talk about fuel economy. So fuel economy is just how much gas does a vehicle use to drive a certain distance. Generally, we define it, just because we like to use standard units here, by how many liters of gas are used to drive 100 kilometers, or the unit being liters per 100 kilometers. Okay, that's our Canadian measure. So, first off, what affects fuel economy? Why do you care about fuel economy? How does this affect you? So, first off, a car that is said to have good fuel economy would be a car that uses less fuel, right? So if it uses less fuel, like it might be something like a hybrid, right, that uses a bit of power, a bit of fuel. It might be a smaller vehicle, like a Civic or a sedan like that. You know, anything with a four-cylinder, generally more fuel efficient than the larger versions. Okay. A car that has, or is said to have, bad fuel economy would be, you know, what you call a gas guzzler. You get your big trucks. You get your big Jeeps, you know, generally. The larger cars generally use more fuel to move the larger vehicle. Okay? And just generally, they just use more fuel. Okay? Now you might be wondering, okay, well, yeah, it uses more fuel. What does that matter, though? Well, there's a couple reasons it matters, right? There's a couple reasons it's important. The environment is one, right? We want to make sure that we're using less fuel because using less fuel puts less greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. That's good for the environment, or better for the environment, or less bad for the environment. They're all kind of bad, but using less fuel is still better. However, maybe you don't necessarily have that on the forefront of your mind. Maybe this might be a little bit more apt for you. Is money, right? More fuel equals more money you have to pay for said fuel. Okay, so a car that has a better fuel economy costs less money to drive in general. Okay, so let's take a look here at a few examples as to how we use fuel economy, how we calculate the cost of fuel, and how we calculate fuel economy from experimental values. So we're going to look at a few examples to kind of break this down. Okay, so let's start here. Okay, here's the first example. So if the cost of gasoline is 115 cents per liter, which is about what it is right now in the time of making this video, and a car requires 52 liters of gas, how much will it cost to fill? One thing we'll notice here is that 115 cents per liter, 115 cents per liter, is actually a rate, right? If we're using rates, all we have to do is take the rate and multiply it by the value, right? So cents per liter times 52 liters, and we get, we actually get 5,980. Now, do you think it costs $5,980 to fill the car? No, because this is still cents, right? So that's 5,980 cents, right? How many cents in a dollar? Well, we got 100 cents in a dollar. So all we got to do is we got to take this 59.80, divide it by the 100, and we get $59.80. Okay, so that's what it will cost to fill that vehicle. It seems pretty simple, but it's the basis for everything else here. So let's take a look at another example here. Okay, so a car with a full tank of gas travels 572 kilometers before stopping to refuel. If the car needs 41.2 liters of gas to fill the tank, find the fuel economy and the cost for the fuel for the trip. And that's assuming this is the cost of fuel right now, 121.9 cents. Okay, so the formula for the fuel economy, so I'm just going to write fuel econ, equals the liters used over the distance in kilometers times 100. Okay, so we just fill in the information we have. So the fuel economy equals the liters used. So it was a full tank of gas, so 41.2 liters, divided by the distance traveled, so 572 kilometers, and then we multiply that by 100. And if we do all that, if we do the division and the multiplication, we end up with 7.2, and remember the unit is liters per 100 kilometers. That's where this 100 comes from, right? To get to the 100 kilometers instead of just 1 kilometer. Because if we divided just these units, we'd have liters per kilometer, but we multiply by 100, we get liters per 100 kilometers. Okay, so that's the fuel economy. So then let's take a look at the actual cost. So this is just like the question before. We used 41.2 liters of fuel, and we know that we spend 121.9 cents on fuel for every liter that we use. So we multiply the rate and we multiply the amount of fuel, and we get $50.22. Okay, so that's, again, that's finding fuel economy, that's finding the price of the gas. So pretty simple so far. Let's take it to just one more, slightly more complicated question. Again, it's not worse, it's just a little bit more involved. Okay, let's take a look. Last one. So Gina traveled a total of 350 kilometers in the city and 200 kilometers on the highway. Her car has a fuel economy of 10.5 liters per 100 kilometers in the city and 7.5 liters per 100 kilometers on the highway. How much fuel was used? So this is a common thing, is that cars are often listed with a fuel economy for the city and for the highway, with the highway having a better fuel economy. Remember, using less gas, better. Okay, so we're going to look at how do we find from fuel economy how much fuel was used if we have the distance. So we have two different fuel economies, so we separate the problem into two different problems, and then we'll come together at the end. Okay, so for the city we traveled 350 kilometers, and we know that we have 10.5 liters for every 100 kilometers. Okay, so that's a rate, so we're just going to multiply. Okay, we simplify that rate, so 350 kilometers times, we have 0.105 liters per kilometer. All we did was we just divided by the 100, right? And then you complete that multiplication, you get 36.75 liters. So that's how much was used in the city. Then we do the same process to find the highway. So 200 kilometers on the highway times 7.4 per 100 kilometers. And that'll give us 200 kilometers times the simplified fraction here. So 7.4 divided by 100 gives us 0.074 liters per kilometer. And then we complete that multiplication, 200 times 0.074, and that gives us 14.8 liters. Okay, so now we know we used 36.75 liters in the city. We used 14.8 liters in the highway. We find the total by adding them up, which gives us a total of 51.55 liters of fuel used. Okay, so we've taken a look at how do we calculate the cost of fuel? How do we calculate the fuel economy? How do we use the fuel economy to calculate the amount of fuel used? Okay, so that's pretty well every way that you'll use fuel economy. So that's your primer and basics of how to use fuel economy to calculate cost and amount of fuel used.